Welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders, where we have engaging conversations about software development and cloud engineering with industry leaders and subject matter experts. These episodes are created by the Great Lakes Tech Leaders, an online community of technology practitioners. Please come join the conversation by visiting gltl.rbn.ai. Again, that's gltl.rbn.ai. Now strap in, because we're deploying to production in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Lunch with Tech Leaders. My name's Harper Klotz. I'm the Community Manager for Great Lakes Tech Leaders, and I'm joined by our hosts Amit Rathi, a software developer, Tom Kowalski, a software and data consultant, and Greg Peterson, an offensive security engineer. And today we'll be discussing the recent CrowdStrike incident.
Awesome. I guess I will start by just describing what brought this topic up. I think the biggest thing is a lot of the push notifications I was receiving during the day. And until speaking with you, Greg, I really thought from what I read, it was a cyber attack, but then I heard that it actually wasn't. So I was wondering if you could go a little bit into that.
Yeah, correct. It was a very alarming day. I had text from business constituents and then from family asking me if they need to turn off their computers. It was definitely an alarming time. But yeah, from what we know, it was a problematic change. It was not a cyber incident. But to your point, it did kind of illustrate why it's important to talk about these things and using your term, demystify them. So, we're not scrambling to have a panic if and when this happens again. So I do think it's an important topic to discuss.
Awesome. And so remind me again, Tom, you said it was customers or clients that were affected?
Yeah, I work for we do managed services for the different cloud providers, so Azure, AWS, and yeah, a lot of them still have a lot of workloads in Microsoft, and yeah, it affected a lot of them. Starting at the night, we could tell something was wrong. Nothing came out that it was that piece of software, right? The CrowdStrike in particular, but we just had an influx of customers on both the AWS and Azure that were having issues, and yeah, we're through the night and into the next day helping them get back up and going.
And I'm curious, to your point, I'm curious where both of you first heard the news. Like, what was your instinct? Did you go to a traditional news a website, where you just, I was getting blasted by some of my peers at 3 a.m, I believe, when it started. But I'm just curious where both of you first heard from, and maybe that's why, the information was so mixed up until probably the 24 hours after it first started happening.
Yeah, I mean, our alarms were going off, right? The different monitors and things, and customers calling in, their workloads are failing. So that was kind of our initial view of it. But then, as it progressed, working with the cloud providers, AWS and Azure, they helped identify the files, and working with CrowdStrike on how to remediate the issue.
Yeah, for me, it was, I actually had my phone on Do Not Disturb mode during the morning and afternoon. And then I just happened to turn it off, and I saw a lot of push notifications from like a Google news feed. So for me, that's why all I got was like headlines, and I still remember it was just saying it was a cyber attack.
Yeah.
And I didn't really click into much of it, but I also had a friend that was stuck at the airport. So that's pretty much who I was talking to. And, they weren't getting any information. They just are told that, they can't proceed with their trip, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's why I was curious to kind of ask a leading question is, I think, myself, I take for granted sometimes how long I've been in the industry, and all of us here are probably more technical than most folks. My family members had access to the same articles where if they read about how, this was something that was changing, like a system level file that tripped this protection in Windows XP, they don't have the skill set to decipher that as not a cyber attack, that was a misconfiguration. I think that some of it too is, I'm not going to, point malice at the news networks, but I don't think they maybe had the skill set to understand what happened. And so probably a better headline than, oops, someone pushed out something wrong is potential cyber attack. And that's why I do think the first, 12 hours or so, that was kind of the leading headline going around.
I guess my question to follow up with that is, what could they do better? Because I suppose the concern I had is, differentiating whether it's a cyber attack versus a bug or, a defect in the software or release cycle, right? And how would they be able to, detect better and quicker?
I think some of it, speaking as a U.S. citizen here, some of it I think is on impetus of our governments to have alerting. We think about, our state governments when we have severe storms, we get that information directly from them through our weather services. I would like to see something like that be brought about. I do think we have to kind of consider, internet as a standard that everybody uses at this point. So I would ultimately like to go to that. To answer your question specifically with media, it's not all of them can have an expert on retainer. I know, once they got a hold of people like Brian Krebs, or I'm blanking on some other names, but the industry stalwarts, they came on to give their opinion. But ultimately, waiting to report until you have the facts would have been better. They're careful. They said potential cyber outage was a lot what I was reading, or cyber attack, but it's ultimately waiting until they have the knowledge. But I do think hopefully this is something, local and national governments look at as why we do need some kind of official alerting system for this style of event.
Yeah, and I guess what would be the difference too, right? If it was labeled as, this was pushed out by a company versus like a cyber attack.
I guess the big thing I would take from that is, and when we label something as a hack or an attack, then of course it's probably assumed it's with malicious intent, versus if it really is just, I kind of associate it to producing a defect in a product from like a factory line, right? That's just, accidents happen. We'd like to prevent them, as a software developer, that's why we have different testing environments before we release code, but often you can never really prepare for production releases as much as you try. So I guess that would be the differential, is if it was, again, an accident, it could be as simple as like a typo, or, in this case, it was a bad config file.
Essentially, yeah, it was a bad push through their QA. And Tom, I would add that I think lessening the panic, it was definitely eye-opening to have like family members reaching out. And I know a joke that they were basically asking, do I need to turn off my phone? I think that's why it's really important to get clear information out to more standard users of a home computer or a phone. I think, if it was a real cyber incident, I think that level of panic that I saw initially would have been, more warranted if we think about the implications of one of, if not the industry leader in EDR protection, if they had been compromised in some fashion.
So to build on that, I sort of brought it up, but if it was essentially a bad release, what were things that could have changed in their release cycle? Because when I read online, there's often jokes about they just needed to have a staging environment, but sometimes that's not as feasible. But is this something where that could have been prevented if they had multiple like testing environments to really test before full release.
If you want to start on this one, or I have some thoughts too, but I'll let you.
Yeah, I can start. I definitely have thoughts. So we try to make our servers, right, as independent as possible, right? So are very ephemeral, no changes to them. And if there are changes, you're making a new server, spinning that up, replacing it. But some servers can't be as ephemeral, right? You can't treat them as cattle. You have to treat them as pets. For those, we still like to have like a patch cadence for them, right? We know we're going to be applying changes to the servers. We make backups. We have people ready if something goes wrong, we need to revert or fix the changes, whatever if it's introduced when doing the patches. What I don't like is this is kind of just pushed at random. And I get the fact, right, that there can be some like 0-day vulnerabilities and things need to be pushed out, quicker, right? And, it's nice to have that option. I don't know too much about it, but from what I can tell, when people are saying this wasn't that, right, and this could have been just pushed out during, a normal maintenance window, right, like where the consumer, right, is making that update versus it being pushed onto them. So those are my thoughts. And then, I guess testing, right? I would hope that things of this magnitude, they are testing, having in a staging environment. And it's very puzzling, right, that this affects so many computers, that this wouldn't have been caught in testing. You would think that, whatever your test coverage was, it would definitely catch this. But since it affects so many computers, that's my thought.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. And I will say, and I'm pulling from just a quote a source, Tech Target article by Sean Kerner is one of the best, like just quick kind of explanations of everything that happened. It does get pretty technical at times, but it was a unique situation in that CrowdStrike sensors obviously update multiple times a day. That's their big selling point. It's not your standard, like old antivirus we had updated every week. It's constantly updating. So that channel file 291 that caused the whole issue, I'm not sure what their QA process is entirely, not sure if we'll ever know that, but essentially we know that flawed file got pushed out as part of these, rapid updates that happen throughout the day. And they essentially didn't notice that error until after the fact. So to Tom's point, clearly the process of QA testing there was broken. Something happened. I'm sure they've worked to figure out exactly what happened, but at that point it was essentially too late because we didn't have the agencies as a user to accept and install that at our own time. It's just part of that system that automatically updates, and that's why it affected the 8.5 million systems or whatever it's estimated to be at this point. So I think my point is, like, even if it's a rapid response update, things that happen all the time, it's why QA is so important. They should have been able to, in theory, catch this if they deployed that file that caused the issue in their test environment and caught that it created this reboot loop.
So going forward, I suppose the concern is, of course, it comes down to these news outlets when they're posting their titles. Of course, they want, clicks, and therefore they will use specific wordage to get those clicks, right? So we can't expect them to change, but what can we do as tech professionals to mitigate that panic? Because it really is discerning. I feel like there's a cyber attack or a data breach every other day, and it's very concerning.
I'll answer real quick. I kind of lead by example is what I always try to do. I can't affect the world on a national stage or global stage, but what I can do is help keep my family and my loved ones informed. So reach out to them during these events. know, everyone on this conversation today is pretty technical, and you know, you can probably drill down into events and try to figure out exactly what happened, and just be a good resource. If your mother-in-law or father-in-law has something happen, you know, help them look into it, explain what happened. That's what I try to do. Like, you know, I had a family member get their Facebook compromised one time. You're like, well, did I get hacked? And I had to explain, no, unfortunately, we were just using a weak password. They were able to guess it and get in. You know, here's what you can do to protect yourself. I think it's similar to that. You know, just help your circle around you stay best as informed as possible is kind of all we can do personally. But I do kind of mention it. Hopefully there's some, you know, discussion at higher levels now of how to make sure this information is delivered accurately in the future.
Wow, I didn't know someone had to actually go to each device. I guess I just assumed it was something they could have done remotely.
Yeah. That's why it took a long time for a lot of the companies, right? Because they had to, and people's machines, right, are working remotely or whatever. They had to send people out to do it, and a lot of times you could get lucky if you're just rebooting and you reboot a bunch of times that depending on the sequence of what ran, you might be able to get in and get the update that removed the file or changed it or whatever. That was helpful. Some of our customers, right, we would just keep rebooting the machines that they had that were affected while, manually working on other ones. And sometimes the ones that were rebooting would fix themselves. So
And Tom, I'm glad you didn't have to travel across the country, that you were able to do a lot of the fixing remotely.
yeah. Even though it did go all night, because everyone saw it in the morning, right, and that afternoon, but it's that the pushes started at I want to say it was like 9 o'clock Eastern time, as when we started noticing it. And yeah, throughout the night of figuring that out, I came on at like 4 o'clock in the morning to help out people that were doing it all night. At that point, they knew what it was when I was working at it 4 in the morning, what files to remove and how to address it. But yeah, it affected a lot of. We didn't have any airline customers, but just other transportation, trucking, banking customers that were all affected. So yeah, affected everyone.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can leave everyone with is the biggest thing to demystify is staying in touch with your community and reaching out. And at the end of the day, just ask for clarification, right? That's where I'm happy that I was able to address these questions with you two, because part of it was not wanting to get sucked into the rabbit hole of articles, because it just seemed like I was getting contradicting information, right? So there's nothing that beats this direct communication.
Definitely.
So I appreciate that. Is there anything else anyone would like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, just one quick thing is, just in terms of staying better informed, I guess, for lack of a better term, things like Beeping Computer, Krebs on Security, news outlets, blogs that focus on information security are good to have, kind of bookmarked for when you need to check into a major event. They still can only work with what they know, but those kind of institutions are probably better equipped in terms of their personnel on their staff to parse the information as it's coming in live. So I definitely would recommend those. Following industry leaders on social media, people like John Hammond from Try Hack Me, Brian Krebs, like I said, that's probably a good suggestion to close on as well.
Do either of you have any recommended resources?
I can definitely drop some in the chat to provide to people of sites I use. Like if there's a major incident, these are the first sites I'm going to open up. And then Tom, of course, I'll let you, if you know any of it you want to provide as well.
No, I'm not very good at it. Just whatever I see, Twitter. No, don't. Yeah.
I always want to caveat though, they do their best, but when I think John Hammond did a couple YouTube lives, with, hey, this is what I know now. This is what we're trying to figure out in terms of the CrowdStrike, but I'll definitely drop those in.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody for listening in today. And I hope that you all found the conversation as informative and valuable as I did. And we'd love to have you join us again for our next episode. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the world of EdTech. And as always, the episode will feature expert guests and interactive conversation. So be sure to tune in. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.